Once upon a time, in a village that thrived under the warmth of the African sun, there lived a boy named Tariq. He was different from the other children in the village. While others laughed and played under the mighty baobab tree, Tariq remained silent, his lips never uttering a word. The villagers often wondered why he never spoke, but no one ever dared ask him. Tariq was an enigma, his eyes often fixed on the horizon as if he were seeing something no one else could. Tariq's silence was not born of misfortune or illness. It was a mystery that ran deeper. His mother, Amina, often spoke of the day he was born. On the day Tariq was born, the winds were strong, and the skies darkened, she would say, her voice heavy with memories. The elders told me that his spirit was special, that the spirits of the ancestors had marked him as one to carry the voices of the past. But despite the elders' warnings, no one could understand what that truly meant, not even Amina herself. And so, life went on in the village, with Tariq growing up in silence, while the rest of the world continued to speak, laugh, and argue. The first time it happened, Tariq was 8 years old. He had always loved to wander the fields, walking the long, dusty paths that led to the river. There, he would sit on the banks, staring at the water, his fingers tracing patterns in the sand. The other children had long since stopped joining him. They found his quiet presence uncomfortable, and it made them uneasy. But Tariq didn't mind, he preferred the solitude. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip below the tree line, Tariq sat by the river, lost in thought. The air was still, the only sounds were the whispers of the wind and the occasional splash of fish breaking the surface of the water. It was then that he heard it, a soft whisper, like a breath carried by the breeze. At first, Tariq thought it was nothing, just the wind playing tricks. But then, the whisper came again, clearer this time. Tariq. Tariq, can you hear me? The voice was strange, deep yet gentle. It seemed to come from all around him, yet nowhere at all. He stiffened, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked around, but there was no one there. The silence of the river made the voice feel even more unnatural. Who are you? Tariq whispered, his voice barely audible. The wind shifted, and then the voice spoke again, but this time, it was louder, as though it was coming from beneath the ground. I am not of this world, young one. I am from the spirit realm. Tariq's eyes widened in shock. He had heard stories of spirits, of ancestors who wandered the earth, but he had never imagined that one would speak to him. Who are you? He asked again, his voice trembling. The voice seemed to pause before it responded, its tone filled with a mixture of sadness and wisdom. I am a spirit who has wandered the earth for many years, waiting for someone like you, Tariq. Tariq sat frozen, unable to speak. His mind raced as he tried to comprehend what was happening. Why me? He finally asked, his voice shaking. The spirit seemed to sigh, a sound that sent a chill down Tariq's spine. Because you, Tariq, are special. You have the gift to hear us, to speak with us. It is a gift that has been passed down through generations, and now, it is yours to carry. Tariq felt a strange sensation in his chest. He didn't fully understand, but somehow, he knew that his life was about to change forever. The days that followed were filled with strange occurrences. Tariq continued to hear whispers, not only at the river but also in the quiet corners of the village. At first, he didn't tell anyone. How could he? Who would believe a silent boy who claimed to hear spirits? But one evening, as he sat by the fire, he could no longer keep the secret. The elders had gathered for their evening ritual, and Tariq sat quietly at the edge of the circle, watching them as they chanted. Then, without warning, a voice came to him again. This time, it was not the same spirit. It was different, older, more powerful. Tariq, the voice said. It is time for you to learn what you must do. Tariq stood up abruptly, startling the elders. His eyes were wide with fear, and for the first time, he spoke. I hear them, he said, his voice hoarse. The spirits. They speak to me. The elders fell silent. They knew of the legends, the stories of children born with the ability to hear the voices of the past. But they had never expected it to happen in their village. One of the elders, Elder Kofi, stood up and approached Tariq. What do the spirits tell you, boy? Tariq swallowed hard. They say I have a gift, that I must help them. The air around them seemed to thicken, and the firelight flickered. The other villagers shifted uncomfortably, murmuring among themselves. But Elder Kofi's expression remained calm. You have been chosen, Tariq, he said slowly. Chosen to bridge the gap between our world and the spirit realm. But this path is not an easy one. You must learn to listen, to understand. The spirits will guide you, but you must be ready to face the trials they set before you. Tariq nodded, though his heart raced. He didn't know what was ahead, but he felt a strange sense of purpose, as though this was his destiny. The first trial came sooner. It was the dry season, and the village was suffering. Crops were failing, and the river was running low. The elders spoke of a curse that had befallen the village many years ago. They said that the spirit of the river had been angered, and now it refused to nourish the land. Elder Kofi called Tariq to the village square one morning, the weight of the situation clear on his face. Tariq, the spirits have told us that only you can lift this curse. You must go to the river and speak to the spirit. Only then will the rains return. Tariq felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had never ventured to the river during such a time. It was said that the spirit of the river was fierce, and no one had dared to approach it for fear of angering it further. But Tariq knew he had no choice. The village depended on him. The journey to the river was long and treacherous. As Tariq walked through the dry fields, he could feel the weight of the village's hopes on his shoulders. The earth beneath his feet was cracked and barren, and the air felt heavy with the scent of dust and death. When he finally reached the river, it was barely a trickle, the water barely moving over the rocks. The once mighty river was now a shadow of its former self. Tariq knelt at the edge of the water and closed his eyes. He could hear the faint whisper of the spirit, but it was distant, like a faint echo from the past. Spirit of the river, he called softly, his voice barely a whisper. I come to you in peace. The village is in need. The crops have failed, the land is dry, and the people suffer. Please, I beg of you, bring the rains back. For a long moment, there was nothing. The wind howled around him, and the water remained still. Tariq's heart sank. Was the spirit angry with him? Then, just as he was about to give up, a voice came to him, louder this time, strong and clear. You have come, boy, the voice said, but you are not yet ready. Tariq opened his eyes. The water before him began to shimmer, and from the depth of the river, a figure began to rise. It was the spirit of the river, a being made of water and light, its form ever-changing, like the flow of the river itself. I will give you the rains, but only if you prove yourself worthy, the spirit said, its voice booming like the thunder of a coming storm. You must bring balance to the earth. Only then will the waters return. Tariq nodded, determination burning in his chest. He didn't know how he would do it, but he knew one thing, he would not fail. Tariq stood before the river spirit, feeling the weight of the challenge that had been placed before him. The air was thick with tension, and the river spirit, its form shimmering like a mirage, hovered above the water. Its eyes, though made of light, seemed to pierce through him, searching for something deep within his soul. You have come, boy, the spirit said, its voice like a distant thunderclap. But to earn the right to call the rains, you must first prove your heart's worth. Tariq swallowed hard, feeling the pressure of the moment. His mind raced as he tried to understand the spirit's words. What must I do? He asked, his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to rise within him. The spirit shifted, its watery form rippling in the breeze. You must face 3 trials. Each trial will test your heart, your courage, and your wisdom. Only then will I know if you are truly worthy. Tariq nodded. He didn't know what the trials would entail, but he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. This was his chance to save the village, to bring the rains back, to fulfill the calling he had been given. The spirit raised one arm, and the water around them began to swirl, creating a vortex that sucked the air from Tariq's lungs. He staggered, but the spirit's voice was calm and steady. The first trial is one of the heart, the spirit said. You must venture into the forest and find the hidden flower. It grows in the heart of the darkest part of the woods, where no light can reach. Only those with pure hearts can find it. If your heart is true, you will succeed. Without waiting for Tariq to respond, the spirit raised its hand, and Tariq was swept away by the current. The world spun around him, and the next moment, he found himself standing at the edge of a dense forest, the trees towering above him like giants. He took a deep breath. The first trial had begun. Tariq stepped into the forest, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and rotting wood. The canopy above blocked out much of the sunlight, casting the forest floor in a dim, greenish glow. The silence was overwhelming, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird. Tariq felt a strange calm wash over him, but beneath that calm was a rising fear. He had never ventured this far into the forest before. The spirit's words echoed in his mind, you must find the hidden flower in the heart of the darkest part of the woods, where no light can reach. He walked deeper into the forest, his heart pounding in his chest. The trees grew closer together, their gnarled branches twisting in strange shapes. The air grew colder, and Tariq could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on him. The deeper he went, the darker it became. It wasn't long before he realized he was completely lost. The trees seemed to close in around him, and the path he had been following vanished as if the forest itself had swallowed it. He stopped, his breath coming in short gasps. He was alone, with nothing but the whispers of the wind and the occasional creak of the branches above him. But then, a flicker of light caught his eye. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it was there. Tariq followed the light, pushing through the thick underbrush, his heart racing with hope. The light grew stronger as he drew closer, until it illuminated a small clearing in the heart of the forest. In the center of the clearing stood a flower, its petals glowing softly in the dim light. It was unlike any flower Tariq had ever seen, with petals that shimmered like silver and a fragrance so sweet it made his head spin. The flower seemed to pose with a life of its own, its light casting strange shadows on the ground around it. Tariq stepped forward, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch the flower. As soon as his fingers brushed its petals, the forest seemed to come alive. The trees groaned, and the ground beneath him shook. A voice, ancient and powerful, filled the air. Your heart is pure, the voice said. You have passed the first trial. The light from the flower intensified, and Tariq felt a rush of warmth flood his body. The forest seemed to open up around him, and he could feel the presence of the spirit of the river guiding him. He had passed the first trial, but there were 2 more to go. The second trial came sooner than Tariq expected. As he emerged from the forest, the world around him shifted. The sky darkened, and the ground beneath him trembled as though it were alive. He looked around in confusion, but then, before him, appeared a massive figure. It was a creature made of shadows, with glowing red eyes and claws as long as swords. The creature growled, its voice a low rumble that shook the air. You must defeat me, Tariq, the creature said. If you do not, the village will remain cursed forever. Tariq's heart raced. He had heard tales of the monsters that roamed the land, but he had never imagined he would face one himself. The creature took a step forward, its claws scraping against the earth, sending sparks flying into the air. Tariq didn't know what to do. He had never fought anything like this before. But then, the voice of the river spirit filled his mind. Courage, Tariq. You must face the darkness within you and find the strength to fight. Tariq took a deep breath. He was scared, but he knew he couldn't back down. He had a duty to the village, to his family, and to the spirits who had entrusted him with this task. The creature lunged at him, but Tariq jumped out of the way, narrowly avoiding its deadly claws. He rose to his feet and stood tall, his body trembling but his resolve hardening. The creature roared, slashing at him with its claws, but Tariq moved quickly, using the lessons he had learned from years of observing the elders and the warriors of his village. He dodged and weaved, his movements graceful despite his fear. Finally, with a burst of strength, Tariq lunged forward, driving his fist into the creature's chest. The creature howled in pain and staggered back, its form flickering like a shadow. Tariq pressed forward, his heart filled with determination. With one final strike, he shattered the creature's form, and it crumbled to dust. The trial was over. Tariq stood victorious, his body bruised and exhausted, but his heart filled with pride. He had passed the second trial. But there was one final challenge to face. The river spirit's voice filled his mind once more. Tariq, you have proven your heart and your courage. But now, you must prove your wisdom. The final trial awaits you. Tariq nodded, knowing that the last trial would be the hardest. He didn't know what it would entail, but he was ready. The world around him shifted again, and Tariq found himself standing at the edge of the river. The water was still, as though waiting for him. You must answer the question of the spirits, the river spirit said. Only then will the rains return to the village. Tariq stepped forward, his feet sinking into the soft sand of the river bank. The water rippled, and a voice rose from its depths. What is the true meaning of life, Tariq? The voice asked, its tone calm but filled with an unearthly power. Tariq's mind raced. The question was simple, yet it was the most profound question anyone could ask. What was the true meaning of life? He thought about his village, his people, and the struggles they faced. He thought about the spirits, and the way they had guided him. He thought about the forest, the river, and the trials he had faced. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Tariq spoke. The true meaning of life is love, he said softly. Love for one another, for the earth, and for the spirits who guide us. It is through love that we find purpose, and through love that we bring balance to the world. The river spirit was silent for a moment. Then, the water surged, and the skies above Tariq opened up. Rain began to fall, pouring down in torrents, soaking the earth and filling the river with life once more. Tariq returned to his village a hero. The rains had come, and the crops began to grow again. The villagers rejoiced, thanking the spirits for their guidance. But they also thanked Tariq, the boy who had spoken to the spirits, the boy who had saved them all. Tariq's silence remained, but it no longer seemed like a curse. He had found his voice in the spirits, and through them, he had brought hope to his people. And in the years that followed, the boy who spoke to spirits would be remembered not only for his silence but for the strength, courage, and wisdom he had shown in the face of impossible odds. The village thrived, and the legend of Tariq, the silent boy who spoke to spirits, lived on forever.